The massive warship Dominion's Edge drifted through the void of space like a metal mountain. Admiral HFY stood on the bridge watching the stars through the main viewport. His razor-sharp claws tapped against the metal railing as he studied the tactical display. The Vorthan Empire had ruled this sector of the galaxy for 3,000 years, and HFY had personally conquered 47 worlds during his military career. Behind him, Sub-Commander Rithek approached with a datapad in his scaled hands. The younger Vorthan officer's armor gleamed under the bridge lighting as he stopped at attention. "Admiral, we have received the long-range scout reports from the Outer Rim," Rithek said in their native language, which sounded like gravel being crushed between metal plates. HFY turned his massive head toward his subordinate. The Admiral stood nearly 9 feet tall, and his thick armored hide bore the scars of countless battles. His yellow eyes glowed in the dim light as he examined the data. "Another primitive world, I assume," he growled while scrolling through the information. The scout data showed a solar system with 9 planets orbiting a yellow star. The third planet from the star showed signs of intelligent life. Radio signals bounced across the planet's surface, and primitive spacecraft moved between the world and its single moon. What made this discovery unusual was the planet itself. "Sir, this world is classified as Class II themed on the Deathworld scale," Rithek reported with obvious concern in his voice. The Galactic Council had only encountered 3 Class II Deathworlds in recorded history, and none of them had supported intelligent life. HFY's eyes widened slightly as he read the environmental data. The planet's surface was covered in violent weather systems that could level entire cities. Massive plates of rock shifted constantly, causing earthquakes that would destroy most galactic settlements. The oceans contained enough salt and acid to dissolve Vorthan armor within hours. The atmosphere held barely enough oxygen to support Kalari breathing systems, and contained gases that were toxic to most known species. How did anything intelligent evolve in that nightmare? The Admiral muttered while studying atmospheric readings. The temperature ranges from freezing to burning depending on location and season. The magnetic field fluctuates wildly, allowing deadly radiation to reach the surface during solar storms. More disturbing were the life form readings. The planet teemed with creatures that would be classified as apex predators on any normal world. Flying beasts with wingspans larger than Threx battlecruisers, land animals that could bite through starship hull plating, ocean dwellers that grew larger than some space stations. Yet somehow the intelligent species had not only survived, but appeared to thrive among these monsters. "The beings call themselves humans," Rithek continued reading from his datapad. "They have covered their world with cities and have begun exploring their local solar system. Their technology appears to be several centuries behind Council standards, but they show rapid advancement in recent decades." HFY nodded slowly as he processed this information. In his experience, Deathworld species usually begged for Council protection once they learned about galactic civilization. The harsh environments that forged them made them grateful for any chance to escape their hostile homeworlds. These humans would likely follow the same pattern. "Prepare the standard first contact package," HFY ordered while walking toward his command chair. "Send them our greeting message with the usual terms. They have 72 hours to respond with their surrender, or we begin pacification procedures." Several star systems away, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his office aboard Luna Station reviewing patrol reports. The former Marine had spent 15 years in Earth's military before joining the newly formed Earth Defense Force. His weathered face showed the marks of someone who had seen combat on 3 continents before humanity reached for the stars. A soft chime from his desk computer interrupted his reading. "Communications from Deep Space Monitor Array, sir," announced Lieutenant Amy Foster over the intercom. "We are receiving a transmission from outside the solar system." Jake's eyebrows rose in surprise. Earth had been listening for alien signals for over a century, but had never received a direct transmission. "On my way," he replied while standing up from his desk. The command center of Luna Station buzzed with activity as technicians worked to decode the alien message. Dr. Lisa Martinez looked up from her science station as Jake entered. "Captain, we have successfully translated the transmission," she announced with excitement mixed with concern in her voice. Jake moved to stand behind her workstation while she pulled up the decoded message on the main screen. The text appeared in crisp English letters, but the content made Jake's stomach tighten. To the primitive species of the third planet, the message began. "You have been discovered by the Galactic Council and are hereby ordered to submit to our authority. Your world will be placed under Council protection, and your species will be relocated to appropriate habitat zones. You have 72 hours to signal your acceptance of these terms. Failure to comply will result in pacification of your world and forced relocation of survivors. The message continued with technical details about surrender procedures and a list of council laws that would govern human behavior. Jake read through the entire document twice before speaking. Have we confirmed this transmission came from outside our solar system, he asked. Yes, sir, Dr. Martinez replied while pulling up tracking data. The signal originated from approximately 4 light hours away and is moving toward us at significant speed. Based on the transmission strength, we estimate a large spacecraft or possibly multiple vessels. Jake studied the star charts showing the alien ship's projected course. In his military experience, surrender ultimatums usually came from opponents who believed they held overwhelming advantage. The question was whether that belief was accurate. Get me a direct line to Earth Command, Jake ordered while moving toward the communication station. We need to contact President Walsh immediately. Also begin full sensor sweeps of the outer system. I want to know exactly what we are dealing with. As the communications officer established contact with Earth, Jake read through the alien message again. The tone reminded him of historical documents from Earth's colonial period, when technologically advanced nations demanded submission from less developed peoples. The difference was that humanity had learned hard lessons from those encounters. President Kevin Walsh appeared on the main screen within minutes of Jake's call. The president's gray hair and lined face showed the stress of leading humanity through its expansion into space. Captain Morrison, what is the nature of this emergency? Walsh asked in his calm political voice. Jake transmitted the alien message to Earth and watched the president's expression change as he read. Mr. President, we have our first confirmed contact with alien intelligence and they are demanding our surrender. Jake reported while highlighting key sections of the message. The president was quiet for several long moments before responding. Captain, I am calling an emergency session with the Joint Chiefs and the Defense Council. How long do we have to respond to this ultimatum? 72 hours, sir, Jake replied while checking the mission chronometer. Based on their transmission source, they should arrive in our outer system within that time frame. President Walsh nodded grimly. Captain Morrison, you and your crew are hereby designated as humanity's first contact team. Prepare your ship for immediate deployment. If these aliens want to meet humanity, they can start with our best. Jake felt a familiar tightness in his chest that he remembered from his Marine days. The feeling that came just before walking into an unknown combat situation. Yes, sir, he replied while saluting. The UES Liberty will be ready for departure within 6 hours. As the transmission ended, Jake looked around the command center at his crew. Dr. Martinez continued analyzing the alien signal, while Lieutenant Foster coordinated with Earth's defense networks. These men and women had volunteered to serve on the frontier of human space exploration. None of them had expected their first mission to involve aliens demanding Earth's surrender. Jake walked back to his office and pulled up the personnel files for his crew. Danny Kim, the weapons specialist, had served in the Korean Defense Force before joining the EDF. Sophie Turner had designed propulsion systems for 3 different spacecraft manufacturers. Each crew member brought skills that humanity had developed through centuries of conflict and innovation. The alien message had been clear about one thing. The Galactic Council considered humanity a primitive species that would be grateful for their protection. Jake suspected they were about to learn that humans had a different perspective on the concept of protection. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every natural disaster their homeworld could produce. They had not done so by accepting protection from strangers. Jake began preparing his mission briefing while wondering what kind of beings thought they could simply demand Earth's surrender. In a few hours, he would find out exactly what humanity was dealing with. More importantly, the aliens were about to discover what happened when they threatened a species that had clawed its way to the top of the most dangerous food chain in the galaxy. Admiral Zexhai stood before the holographic display, showing the human solar system as his fleet emerged from hyperspace. 12 massive Vorthon warships materialized in perfect formation at the edge of the system. Each vessel stretched over 2 kilometers in length and bristled with enough firepower to level continents. The Admiral had brought what he considered a modest force for dealing with a newly discovered primitive world. Sub-Commander Rithek approached with the latest sensor readings. Sir, we are detecting multiple human vessels, But they appear to be much smaller than our initial estimates suggested, he reported while studying his datapad. The largest human ship we can identify is barely 300 meters long. Zexhi's mandibles clicked together in what passed for Vorthan laughter. These creatures built toys and call them warships, he said while examining the tactical display. The human vessels looked like insects compared to his mighty dreadnoughts. Most appeared to be simple cargo haulers or scientific research ships with minimal weaponry. The largest human vessel began moving toward the Vorthan fleet under what appeared to be primitive chemical propulsion. "Admiral, their flagship is approaching our position," announced the sensor operator from his station. "They are transmitting a message requesting communication." Zexhi settled into his command throne and activated the main communication array. The holographic projector flickered to life, showing the bridge of the approaching human ship. The Admiral expected to see cowering primitives begging for mercy, but instead found himself looking at a calm human male in military uniform. Captain Jake Morrison stood at attention on the bridge of the UES Liberty as the alien communication link established. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Martinez monitored the sensor readings while Lieutenant Amy Foster managed the translation protocols. The alien that appeared on their main screen was even more impressive than the intelligence reports had suggested. Admiral Zexhi towered over 9 feet tall, with thick armored hide that looked capable of stopping small arms fire. His yellow eyes glowed with predatory intelligence while razor-sharp claws tapped against his command chair. Scars covered his massive frame, telling stories of countless battles across the galaxy. "I am Admiral Zexhi of the Vorthan Empire and commander of this Galactic Council fleet," the alien announced in a voice that sounded like grinding stone. "You are Captain Morrison of the primitive human species. Have you come to formally surrender your world to Council authority?" Jake kept his expression neutral despite the alien's intimidating appearance. "Admiral Zexhi, I am here to discuss the terms you transmitted to our government," he replied in a steady voice. "However, I must inform you that humanity does not surrender to uninvited guests who make demands without proper diplomatic introduction." Zexhi's eyes narrowed at this unexpected response. In 3,000 years of galactic conquest, no species had ever questioned Council authority during first contact. Deathworld survivors were usually grateful for any chance to escape their hostile environments under Council protection. "Captain Morrison, you misunderstand the situation," Zexhi said while leaning forward in his throne. "The Galactic Council offers protection to primitive species who cannot defend themselves. Your world is a Class 3 death world that has clearly shaped your species into capable survivors. However, survival on a hostile planet does not prepare you for the realities of galactic civilization." Jake listened carefully, while Dr. Martinez continued scanning the alien vessels. The readings were providing valuable intelligence about Vorthan technology and defensive capabilities. "Sir, their shield systems appear to be using outdated harmonic frequencies," she whispered through his earpiece. "Their weapon arrays are powerful, but lack sophisticated targeting systems. Admiral, with respect, I believe you may have misunderstood our capabilities," Jake replied while maintaining eye contact with the massive alien. "Humanity has not only survived on our world, but has thrived by learning to adapt to any challenge. We do not require protection from beings who have not bothered to properly introduce themselves." Zexhi's claws extended slightly as his patience began wearing thin. No species had ever spoken to him with such casual disregard for Council authority. Sub-Commander Rithak watched nervously from his station as the Admiral's temper began to rise. "Captain Morrison, perhaps you require a demonstration of Council power to understand your position," Zexhi growled while gesturing toward his tactical display. "My single flagship carries enough firepower to destroy every human settlement on your moon. My fleet could reduce your homeworld to radioactive ash within hours." Jake nodded thoughtfully as if considering this information. "Admiral, I have no doubt your weapons are impressive by galactic standards," he said, while Dr. Martinez continued her sensor analysis. "However, I notice your vessels appear designed for engaging targets that fight in predictable patterns. Has the Council ever encountered opponents who prefer unconventional tactics?" The question caught Zexhi off guard. In his experience, military conflicts followed established patterns of fleet engagement and planetary bombardment. Weaker civilizations either surrendered immediately or attempted futile resistance that was quickly crushed by superior firepower. "What do you mean by unconventional tactics?" Zexhi asked with genuine curiosity replacing his earlier anger. Warfare is a simple matter of applying superior force against enemy positions until they surrender or are destroyed. Jake exchanged a quick glance with Dr. Martinez, who had finished her preliminary scans of the alien fleet. Captain, their computer systems appear to be several generations behind our current technology, she reported quietly. Their tactical programs seem designed for straightforward engagements with limited adaptive capability. Admiral, I would be interested in learning more about your previous military campaigns, Jake said while activating his ship's recording systems. Perhaps you could share some examples of how the Council deals with resistant species. We find that understanding an opponent's methods is crucial for effective decision-making. Zexhi's pride swelled at the opportunity to demonstrate Vorthon military superiority. He activated his personal battle archive and selected footage from the conquest of Carathia. The recordings showed Vorthon forces overwhelming primitive defenders, who fought with energy weapons but lacked coordinated tactics. The Carathians were classified as a Class 8 Deathworld species, Zexhi explained while the battle footage played. They possessed natural armor plating and could survive in environments that would kill most galactic citizens. However, they fell within 6 days when faced with proper military force. Jake watched the alien battle recordings with professional interest. The Carathians appeared to be impressive physical specimens, but their tactics were essentially those of enhanced barbarians. They charged directly at enemy positions without coordination or strategic planning. The Vorthon victory had been achieved through simple, overwhelming firepower. These Carathians were certainly formidable individually, Jake commented while studying the footage. But they seem to have fought as separate warriors rather than coordinated military units. Have you encountered species that employ integrated combined arms tactics? Zexhi looked puzzled by the question. What do you mean by combined arms tactics, he asked while Sub-Commander Rithak leaned closer to listen. Jake realized he had stumbled onto something significant. The Galactic Council apparently dominated through superior technology and individual combat prowess, but had never faced opponents who understood modern military doctrine. Captain Morrison to Admiral Zexhi. I believe we have much to learn from each other, he said carefully. Perhaps we could arrange a more detailed cultural exchange. The Vorthon admiral found himself intrigued by this unusual human commander. Most species either cowered in terror or made desperate threats when faced with council authority. This Captain Morrison seemed genuinely interested in learning about galactic military capabilities. Very well, Captain Morrison, Zexhi decided after a moment of consideration. You may bring a small diplomatic team aboard my flagship. We shall demonstrate proper galactic civilization, and perhaps you will understand why Council protection benefits primitive species. Jake felt a surge of anticipation as he realized the aliens were about to provide him with detailed intelligence about their capabilities. Thank you, Admiral, I accept your invitation, he replied while signaling Dr. Martinez to prepare a boarding team. We look forward to learning about Galactic Council methods. As the communication link closed, Jake turned to address his crew. Dr. Martinez, I want detailed scans of everything we encounter on that alien ship, he ordered quietly. Lieutenant Foster, monitor all communications and record everything. Danny Kim, prepare a full equipment loadout but keep weapons concealed. Sir, do you think this is wise? Dr. Martinez asked with concern in her voice. We will be completely outnumbered aboard their vessel. Jake checked his sidearm and activated his personal recording device. Doctor, I have a feeling these aliens are about to teach us something very important about their weaknesses, he replied with a slight smile. Sometimes the best intelligence comes from letting your opponent demonstrate their capabilities. Marine Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez joined the boarding team along with linguist Dr. Helen Chang. As they prepared to transfer to the alien flagship, Jake reviewed what they had learned so far. The shuttle carrying Jake's diplomatic team docked with the Dominion's Edge through a massive airlock that could have accommodated 3 human vessels. Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez stayed close to Captain Morrison as they walked through corridors designed for beings much larger than humans. The walls stretched 15 feet high, and every surface was covered in metal plating that looked thick enough to stop tank rounds. Admiral Zexhi waited in the main conference chamber surrounded by his senior staff. The room contained representatives from all 3 major council species. Kalari officers stood like living crystals that reflected light in rainbow patterns, while Threx commanders resembled giant insects with razor-sharp limbs and compound eyes. Welcome, Aboard the Dominion's Edge, Captain Morrison, Admiral Zexhai announced while gesturing toward chairs that had been hastily modified for human size. You are the first primitive species to visit a Council warship as guests rather than prisoners. Jake studied the alien officers while Dr. Helen Chang activated her translation device. The Council representatives were indeed impressive physical specimens, but Jake noticed something interesting about their behavior. They moved with the confidence of beings who had never faced serious opposition. "Admiral, this is an honor," Jake replied while taking his assigned seat. Dr. Chang and Sergeant Rodriguez positioned themselves where they could observe the entire room. "I am curious about the history of Council expansion across the galaxy." Subcommander Rethak activated a holographic display showing star maps with thousands of conquered worlds marked in red. "The Galactic Council has brought civilization to 47,000 primitive worlds over the past 3 millennia, he announced proudly. Each conquest has followed standard protocols with minimal resistance. The tactical records played showing Council fleets overwhelming various alien species through superior firepower. Jake watched carefully as battle after battle demonstrated the same pattern. Council forces would arrive at a world deploy in standard formations and methodically destroy any opposition through overwhelming technological advantage. "Your military campaigns are certainly impressive," Jake commented while studying the holographic displays. "I notice most of your opponents seem to have used similar defensive strategies. Have you encountered species that employed asymmetric warfare or guerrilla tactics?" The alien officers exchanged confused glances. Commander Thekmore of the Threx leaned forward on his multiple legs. "What do you mean by asymmetric warfare?" he asked in a voice that sounded like clicking metal. "Warfare is a matter of superior force defeating inferior force." Jake realized the Council had never encountered opponents who understood basic military strategy beyond direct confrontation. "Admiral, with your permission, I would like to return to my ship and consult with my government about these fascinating tactical records," he said while standing from his chair. As Jake's team prepared to leave, Admiral Zexhai made an unexpected announcement. "Captain Morrison, I propose a demonstration of our respective military capabilities," he said with confidence gleaming in his yellow eyes. "A limited engagement between single vessels to showcase the superiority of Council warfare." Jake paused at the airlock entrance and turned back toward the alien admiral. "What kind of demonstration did you have in mind?" he asked with genuine interest. Admiral Zexhai had been considering this idea since their first communication. No primitive species had ever challenged Council authority, and he was curious about human capabilities. "A simple ship-to-ship engagement," he announced while his officers watched nervously. "One of my escort vessels against your flagship. First to disable the opponent's ship wins." The proposal sent excited whispers through the gathered alien officers. Sub-Commander Rithak looked concerned about allowing primitives to engage Council forces, even in a limited demonstration. "Sir, perhaps this is unwise," he said quietly. "If the humans are damaged or destroyed, it could complicate our mission." Admiral Zexhai waved away his subordinate's concerns. "The human vessel is barely 1/6 the size of our smallest escort ship," he replied confidently. "This demonstration will show them the futility of resistance while providing valuable intelligence about primitive human technology." Jake considered the proposal while calculating odds and opportunities. "Admiral, I accept your challenge," he said after a moment of thought. "However, I suggest we establish clear rules of engagement to prevent any unfortunate accidents." The rules were simple. Both ships would use only non-lethal disabling weapons. The engagement would end when one vessel surrendered or became unable to continue fighting. Neutral observation drones would monitor the battle to ensure fair play. Admiral Zexhai selected Commander Thekmore to pilot the escort vessel Bloodclaw against the human ship. The Threx commander had personally destroyed 17 primitive fleets during his career and had never suffered a defeat. His vessel was 5 times larger than the UES. Liberty and carried energy, weapons that could slice through asteroid fields. Jake returned to his ship with his diplomatic team while the aliens prepared for what they considered a minor demonstration. In the Liberty's conference room, Jake assembled his senior staff to discuss the upcoming engagement. Dr. Martinez pulled up detailed scans of the Bloodclaw that she had gathered during their visit. "Their ship design follows standard Council patterns," she reported, while highlighting weak points on the holographic display. Heavy frontal armor and weapons, but limited coverage of rear and ventral sections. Danny Kim studied the alien weapon signatures from his tactical station. Sir, their energy weapons are powerful, but they use predictable firing patterns, he announced while running combat simulations. Their targeting systems appear designed for engaging slow-moving targets at long range. Sophie Turner had spent the shuttle ride analyzing alien engine signatures. Captain, their propulsion system is brute force rather than efficiency, she reported with excitement in her voice. They have never needed to develop evasive maneuvering because their previous opponents always fought head-on battles. Jake felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came before combat. His crew had identified multiple weaknesses in Council military doctrine that could be exploited by creative tactics. All right, people, we have an opportunity to show these aliens something they have never seen before, he announced while moving to his command chair. The two ships took their positions, 1,000 kilometers apart, while observation drones established monitoring positions. Commander Theckmore activated his weapon systems and began charging directly toward the Liberty in a standard Council attack formation. His strategy was simple, overwhelming frontal assault until the enemy vessel surrendered. Jake watched the approaching alien ship on his tactical display while his crew made final preparations. Sophie Turner had implemented engine modifications that would allow impossible maneuvering for a ship of their size. Dr. Martinez coordinated with Earth's cyber warfare specialists to prepare electronic countermeasures that alien computers had never encountered. Danny Kim armed non-lethal weapon systems, including electromagnetic pulse mines and holographic decoy projectors. Lieutenant Foster prepared communication jamming protocols, while Sergeant Rodriguez coordinated boarding preparations in case the opportunity arose. The engagement began exactly as Jake had predicted. Commander Theckmore charged straight at the Liberty with weapons blazing in a frontal assault that had overwhelmed every previous opponent. Energy beams lanced through space where the human ship had been moments before. Jake ordered evasive maneuvers that seemed impossible for a vessel of their size. The Liberty danced around the alien attack patterns, using Earth's gravitational field and debris from nearby asteroids to confuse Threck's targeting systems. Within minutes, it became clear that the aliens had never faced an opponent with this level of tactical unpredictability. The Bloodclaw's weapons continued firing at empty space while the Liberty used the larger ship's blind spots to avoid detection. Sophie Turner's modifications allowed them to literally crawl along the alien vessel's hull, staying in positions that Council designers had never considered. Vulnerable, Commander Theckmore found himself unable to target an enemy that refused to fight according to established galactic warfare protocols. His tactical computer could not process movements that defied every standard engagement pattern. The human ship had vanished from his sensors despite being close enough to touch his hull plating. Admiral Zexhai watched from his flagship as his most experienced commander struggled against tactics that made no logical sense. The human vessel appeared to be treating the engagement as some kind of elaborate game rather than serious military combat. Jake's crew implemented the next phase of their demonstration. Dr. Martinez led a cyber intrusion that accessed the Bloodclaw's navigation systems. Instead of causing damage, she uploaded human music and mathematical equations that overwhelmed the alien's simple computer architecture. Commander Theckmore stared in shock as his tactical displays began playing classical music while showing complex mathematical proofs that his systems could not process. The psychological impact was devastating as he realized the primitives had somehow penetrated Council military computer networks. The final surprise came when Sergeant Rodriguez implemented human boarding tactics. Commander Theckmore stood frozen on his bridge as three humans in environmental suits emerged from the airlock they had cut through his ship's hull. Sergeant Rodriguez approached with his hands visible and empty, while two other Marines flanked the entrance. The Threck's commander's compound eyes reflected confusion and something that might have been fear. "Commander, we mean no harm to you or your crew," Rodriguez announced through his suit's external speakers. "Captain Morrison requests that you acknowledge the end of this engagement so we can return to our respective ships." The alien commander looked around his bridge where warning lights flashed and computer screens displayed incomprehensible human data. His tactical officer reported that their weapon systems had been remotely disabled, while navigation computers played what appeared to be primitive human music. "Commander, what are your orders?" the tactical officer asked in the clicking Threx language. Thekmor had fought in 43 battles during his military career and had never encountered anything like human tactics. His ship remained structurally intact, but had been completely neutralized by methods that defied every principle of galactic warfare. "I surrender," he announced while his crew watched in stunned silence. Rodriguez activated his communication device to contact the Liberty. "Captain Morrison, Commander Thekmor has acknowledged defeat," he reported while maintaining respectful distance from the alien crew, requesting permission to return to our ship. Aboard the Dominion's Edge, Admiral Zexhai stared at his tactical displays, trying to understand what had just occurred. Sub-Commander Rithak reviewed the engagement recordings for the third time while other council officers debated the implications of their first military defeat in 3 millennia. "Sir, the humans use tactics that are not found in any of our military databases," Rithak reported while highlighting key moments from the battle footage. "They treated the engagement like some kind of 3-dimensional puzzle rather than standard ship-to-ship combat." Admiral Zexhai watched the recordings showing the human vessel disappearing from sensors, then reappearing in impossible positions. The Liberty had used gravitational fields, asteroid debris, and even the Bloodclaw itself as cover, while implementing attacks that no rational species would attempt. Science Officer Veltar of the Kalari studied the cyber warfare aspects of the engagement. "Admiral, the humans penetrated our computer networks using methods we have never encountered," she announced while her crystalline form shifted colors with excitement. "They did not attempt to destroy our systems, but instead uploaded data that overwhelmed our processing capabilities. The uploaded human music and mathematical proofs had caused Threx tactical computers to freeze while trying to process information they were not designed to handle. More disturbing was the realization that the humans could have caused permanent damage, but had chosen restraint instead." Admiral Zexhai activated the communication array to contact Captain Morrison. The human commander appeared on the main screen looking calm and professional, despite having just achieved the impossible. "Captain Morrison, I request a private meeting to discuss the implications of this engagement," he announced, while his officers listened carefully. Jake agreed to the meeting and transported alone to the Vorthon flagship. Admiral Zexhai waited in his private quarters surrounded by trophies from conquered worlds and battle honors earned over centuries of warfare. The alien admiral's massive frame seemed somehow diminished as he gestured for Jake to sit. "Captain Morrison, in 3,000 years of galactic conquest, my species has never been defeated in combat." Zexhai began while pouring drinks from bottles that contained liquids Jake decided not to identify. "Your tactics were unlike anything in our military experience." Jake accepted the offered drink but did not taste it while studying the alien admiral's expression. "Admiral, your forces are impressive and your technology is advanced," he replied carefully. "However, it appears that Council military doctrine assumes all opponents will fight using similar methods." Zexhai's claws tapped against his chair as he considered Jake's words. "In our experience, warfare follows predictable patterns," he admitted with what sounded like frustration. "Stronger forces defeat weaker forces through superior firepower and defensive capabilities. Your methods seem to ignore these basic principles." The human captain leaned forward with genuine interest. "Admiral, may I ask about your military training and the development of council tactics over the centuries?" he said while activating his personal recording device with Zexhai's permission. What followed was a conversation that shook the foundations of everything Admiral Zexhai believed about warfare and civilization. The alien admiral described 3 millennia of galactic conquest where every enemy had been either primitive barbarians with energy, weapons, or advanced civilizations that fought using predictable fleet tactics. The Council had never encountered opponents who combined advanced technology with unconventional thinking. Every species they had conquered either surrendered immediately upon seeing Council superiority or attempted futile resistance using standard military formations that were easily countered. "Admiral, this explains much about your tactical doctrine," Jake said while processing the implications of what he had learned. "Your forces have become optimized for fighting opponents who use the same basic strategies. You have never needed to develop countermeasures for asymmetric warfare." Zexhai found himself asking questions that had never occurred to him during his military career. "Captain Morrison, What do you mean by asymmetric warfare, and why do humans fight in such unpredictable patterns? He asked while his yellow eyes reflected genuine curiosity. Jake spent the next hour explaining human military history and the evolution of tactics through constant conflict. He described how Earth's nations had fought each other for thousands of years using every possible strategy to gain advantage over opponents with similar technology levels. Humans learned to win battles through creativity, adaptation, and willingness to attempt tactics that seemed impossible, Jake explained while showing historical footage on his portable device. We developed these methods by fighting opponents who could learn and counter our strategies. The alien admiral watched recordings of human conflicts showing armies that changed tactics in real time, adapted to enemy countermeasures, and employed strategies that sacrificed predictability for effectiveness. What disturbed Zexai most was the realization that humans had spent millennia fighting opponents as intelligent and adaptive as themselves. Admiral, your species has dominated the galaxy by being superior to every opponent you have encountered. Jake continued while closing his device. However, you have never faced enemies who could force you to innovate and adapt your methods. Zexai sat in silence for several minutes while absorbing the implications of this revelation. The Galactic Council had achieved dominance through overwhelming superiority, but had become stagnant because no opponent had ever challenged their methods. Captain Morrison, what would happen if human tactical knowledge spread to other species in the galaxy? He asked with growing concern. Jake considered the question carefully before responding. Admiral, that would depend on whether the Council chose to learn from this encounter or continued using outdated methods against opponents who had acquired new capabilities, he said while meeting the alien's gaze directly. The conversation continued for another hour as Admiral Zexai began to understand the true scope of the challenge humanity represented. These were not primitive Deathworld survivors grateful for Council protection. They were apex predators who had evolved through constant warfare against equally dangerous opponents. When Jake finally returned to his ship, Admiral Zexai remained in his quarters staring at the recordings of human tactical demonstrations. For the first time in his military career, he began to question whether the Galactic Council's dominance was as secure as he had always believed. Sub-Commander Rithik found his commander hours later, still reviewing the engagement footage. "So what are your orders regarding the human situation?" he asked while noting the Admiral's troubled expression. Admiral Zexai looked up from the tactical displays with the expression of someone whose worldview had been fundamentally challenged. "Rithik, I believe we have encountered something that could change the entire structure of galactic civilization," he said quietly. "The question is whether the Council will recognize this threat before it is too late to adapt." The alien admiral began composing his report to the Galactic Council while wondering how to explain that primitives from a class the Deathworld had just demonstrated that 3,000 years of military dominance might be ending. Outside his viewport, the human ship continued its patrol pattern using movement techniques that defied everything he thought he knew about space combat. Admiral Zexai realized that humanity had taught him something more disturbing than new tactical methods. They had shown him that evolution never stops, and that predators who become too comfortable with their dominance eventually encounter something that forces them to adapt or die. Admiral Zexai stood before the assembled Galactic Council on the capital world of Nexus Prime 3 weeks after his encounter with humanity. The massive chamber contained representatives from 200 species, while holographic displays showed the tactical footage from the human engagement. Council members whispered among themselves as they watched their most experienced military commander explain how primitives had defeated Vorthan forces. War Master Grixon of the Threx rose from his crystalline platform, with all 6 limbs clicking against the floor. "Admiral Zexai, you claim that a single primitive vessel defeated one of our escort ships using impossible tactics," he announced while his compound eyes reflected skepticism. "This footage must be fabricated or misinterpreted." The Threx War Master had commanded Council fleets for over 2 centuries and refused to accept that newly discovered primitives could challenge galactic military superiority. "These humans are Clastothene Deathworld survivors, who should be grateful for Council protection, rather than demonstrating imaginary tactical capabilities," he continued, while other conservative Council members voiced agreement. Science Director Veltar of the Kalari activated her analysis systems and projected detailed breakdowns of the human tactics. Honored Council members, the footage has been verified through multiple independent sources, she announced while her crystalline form shifted to deep blue colors, indicating serious concern. The humans employed methods that are completely unknown to our military databases. Admiral Zexai watched the council debate while knowing that many members would never accept the reality of what had occurred. The footage showed human tactics that defied 3 millennia of established warfare principles, but conservative factions dismissed anything that challenged their worldview. Chancellor Mordak of the hegemony called for order, as arguments erupted across the chamber. The ancient leader had guided council policy for over 500 years and understood the implications of Zexai's report better than most members. Admiral, what do you recommend regarding this human situation? He asked while the chamber fell silent. Admiral Zexai had spent weeks considering his response to this question. Honored Chancellor, I believe we face a choice between adaptation and eventual defeat, he announced while meeting the gaze of council leaders. The humans represent evolutionary pressure that we have not encountered in our recorded history. War Master Grixon slammed his foremost limbs against his platform in anger. You suggest that primitives threaten the greatest military force in galactic history, he said with outrage coloring his translated words. I propose immediate invasion to crush this threat before other species learn of our supposed weakness. Science Director Veltar projected probability analyses showing various scenarios for human contact. Council members, the mathematical models, indicate that direct military confrontation with humans could destabilize our entire governmental structure, she reported while highlighting key data points. Their tactical adaptability suggests they could teach other species methods that would challenge our authority. The debate continued for hours while Admiral Zexai provided detailed explanations of human capabilities. He described their cyber, warfare techniques, psychological operations, and most disturbing of all, their apparent ability to innovate solutions in real time during combat situations. On Earth, President Kevin Walsh convened emergency sessions with military leaders and scientific advisors as reports arrived about galactic political developments. Intelligence gathered by Captain Morrison had revealed the scope of the challenge facing humanity. The Galactic Council controlled thousands of worlds and possessed fleets that could overwhelm Earth through simple numerical superiority. General Patricia Brooks studied tactical analyses in the Pentagon War Room, while Admiral Ryan Cooper coordinated with Earth's space defense networks. The demonstration had proved that humanity could defend itself against individual council ships, but full-scale invasion would require different strategies. Dr. Lisa Martinez presented her proposal to the assembled leadership. Mr. President, I recommend what we are calling the Trojan Horse Protocol, she announced while activating holographic displays showing her strategic analysis. Instead of waiting for invasion, we should volunteer to join the Galactic Council as military advisors. President Walsh considered the implications of this unexpected strategy. Doctor, you suggest that we infiltrate their organization, rather than preparing for siege warfare, he said while studying the projected scenarios. Captain Morrison supported Dr. Martinez's proposal from his position at Luna Station. Sir, our intelligence indicates that Council military doctrine has remained unchanged for centuries because they have never faced adaptive opponents, he reported through secure communication links. We could revolutionize galactic warfare while learning about their technology and political structure. General Brooks added tactical considerations to the discussion. Mr. President, the humans could teach aliens concepts they have never encountered, while gaining time to develop defensive capabilities, she said while highlighting potential advantages. However, this strategy would require careful management to prevent the Council from recognizing the full scope of our capabilities. The final decision came when Admiral Zexai made an unprecedented choice that would change galactic history forever. Instead of following Council orders for immediate invasion, he secretly contacted Captain Morrison with a proposal that shocked both human and alien leadership. Jake received the encrypted transmission while conducting patrol operations near Jupiter. Admiral Zexai appeared on his private communication screen looking around nervously before speaking. Captain Morrison, I wish to propose an alliance between our forces, he announced while transmitting classified Council military data. I will share intelligence about Council capabilities in exchange for human tactical training. The proposal represented something the galaxy had never seen before. An alliance between former enemies based on mutual recognition that evolution and adaptation were more important than maintaining established power structures. Jake realized that Admiral Zexhai had chosen to betray his own government, rather than continue serving a system that refused to learn. Jake accepted the alliance while coordinating with Earth leadership. The first secret training exercises began within days as Vorthon pilots learned evasive maneuvers from human instructors, while human engineers studied alien energy systems. Both species discovered that cooperation between apex predators could create capabilities that neither possessed alone. War Master Grixon launched his invasion fleet toward Earth 3 months later, with 200 ships carrying enough firepower to sterilize continents. His forces expected to find primitive humans cowering behind inadequate defenses. Instead, they encountered Vorthon vessels using human tactics combined with Council technology in ways that made traditional fleet combat impossible. The invasion. Fleet found itself fighting opponents who had learned to think like humans while possessing the physical capabilities of galactic apex predators. Vorthon ships equipped with human cyber warfare systems disabled Threx communications while using gravitational slingshot maneuvers that no Council tactical computer could predict. Admiral Zexhai commanded the combined human Vorthon forces from his flagship while Jake coordinated tactical operations from the Liberty. The two commanders had spent months developing strategies that combined human innovation with alien capabilities. Their forces moved like a single organism, adapting to enemy countermeasures faster than Council computers could process tactical changes. The Battle of Sol lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete defeat of the Council invasion fleet. War Master Grixon found himself surrendering to beings he had considered primitive, while his surviving ships were captured by forces using tactics that redefined the possibilities of space combat. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching joint human-alien training exercises in Earth orbit 6 months after first contact. Vorthon pilots practiced impossible maneuvers alongside human squadrons, while alien engineers learned to think in ways their species had never attempted. The galaxy's established order had crumbled and been replaced by something far more dangerous than the Council had ever imagined. Jake activated his personal log recorder as he prepared his final report. The aliens called themselves apex predators because they had never met anything that could challenge them, he said while watching mixed crews working together on revolutionary spacecraft designs. They thought Deathworlders were dangerous because of physical adaptations. They never understood that the real weapon is the ability to look at any situation and ask, how can we do this better? The recording continued as Jake reflected on humanity's impact on galactic civilization. Today we taught the galaxy that evolution never stops, he said, while observing alien cadets learning human tactical doctrine. Tomorrow we find out if they are willing to learn that being an apex predator means never being satisfied with the status quo. The story ended with implications that would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity's greatest contribution would not be conquest, but something far more transformative. They had taught other species to think like humans, which meant the universe would never be predictable again.